able to start the other one. And maybe we got a late start. All right, let's look at the first one. It says, given the diagram below, if M is the midpoint, I'm going to stop right there. Midpoint means I need to make marks on it. Midpoint means I need to make marks on it so I can get those points. So even if I just did this, I read midpoint and I put tick marks on it, that's worth a point because I understood what midpoint meant. Midpoint meant it cut it in half. I got two congruent segments. And in fact, as soon as I know these two things are congruent, I know that basically I created an equal sign because congruent equals congruent. So I created an equal sign. So I should have been able to quickly go, oh, that must mean that 7x minus 5 equals 19 minus x. They just have to equal each other. That's what midpoint means. It means it creates two things that are equal to each other. Now, if that's as far as we got, we're going to get a big chunk of points. That's why I'm saying, like, if you don't have time to finish stuff, at least put information down for me. Just say they're equal and we'll get some more points. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add x to both sides because I can't really simplify anything else. I'm also, just for the sake of room, I'm also going to add 5 to both sides. That will do both things at once. So I'll move the x over, I'll move the 5 over. Just for time's sake, that's going to give me 7x plus x, which equals 8x, equals 24. Here's the nice thing. I know 8 goes into 24 evenly, and it's going to go into it 4 times. So we have x equals 4. Here's the problem. 4 is not one of my solutions. So I should probably go back and look at the question. The question says find the length of CE. I need to find the length of CE. That's why 4 is not one of these options. Yeah. Oh, 3, sorry. Thank you for following along. X equals 3 would be much better. Okay, so I need to plug that 3 back into both of these to get our total length. So I need to take that 3 to get our full answer. I need to take that 3, I need to plug it in here. And I need to plug it in here. And those both should come out to the exact same value. That's the point of them being a midpoint. So maybe check the easy one, 19 minus 3. 19 minus 3 is 16. Let's double check that this one would be 16. 7 times 3 is 21. 21 minus 5 is 16. Now remember, we are doing the entire length of C to E, so that'd be 16 plus 16, which would be 32. All right, our next one says, given the diagram below, if CD equals x plus 4, so why not write that on my line? This is x plus 4. Then it says DE equals 2x plus 7, so let's write that on there, 2x plus 7. And then they say the entire length is 7x minus 25. So we're going to have this entire length is 7x minus 25. Now remember, when I have segments, all they're saying is segment plus segment equals the big segment. If I told you this was 3 and this was 7, you'd say the entire length is 10. That is our equation. Part plus part equals whole. Remember that, because even if I'm terrible at algebra, at least I can set this up. Part plus part equals whole. That is our equation. So the first part is going to be that x plus 4. So we'll have x plus 4 plus the second part, which is that 2x plus 7. And that's going to equal the whole length. Let's do that in red. 7x minus 25. I have part plus part equals whole. You definitely need that for the quiz. You definitely need to know how to do that for the quiz. That is definitely one of your questions on there. That is part plus part equals whole. Now we just need to simplify the left-hand side, realizing that x plus 2x, I got that x and that 2x would give me 3x's. I have that 4 plus that 7 would equal 11. My other side is 7x minus 25. Once again, for the sake of time, I'm going to kind of rush through this part. I am going to subtract 3x from both sides to move the 3x to the other side. I'm also going to, in the same step, move the 25 to the other side. So I'm going to add 25 to both sides to get rid of it from this side and add it to this side. I'm running short of room, but we can finish this. 11 plus 25 is going to be 36. 7x minus 3x is 4x. I do have to divide both sides by 4 to get that 4 gone. Turn that into a 1. And 36 divided by 4 is not quite 10, but it's 9. And we should have x equals 9 would be our final answer. It does ask for x. This is on the quiz. Guarantee it. Okay, questions on either one of those two?
On the homework?
On either one of these two. We did have homework questions on Monday, so we're going to roll into the homework. We should have time for questions of the homework either right before lunch or after lunch, right before we take the quiz. Maybe that's the best time to answer those questions too, right before the quiz, just so we have a little refresher. All right, ready to go? We want to get through this as best as possible, so let's play along, answer questions, and let's go from there. Okay, distance formula. This is not the same distance formula we just did. The other distance formula we did, remember, was something minus something, make it positive. That was only if it's on a number line. If it's on an XY plane, now we have coordinates. I need to find the midpoint of two given points on the coordinates. So keep these two formulas straight. One is for number lines. That's when it's something minus something. Make it positive. Does that ring a bell? Okay. This is slightly different. This is going to be based upon what's called the Pythagorean theorem. Does anyone remember the Pythagorean theorem? Yeah, anyone? Scarlett? No? Burke, you want to cover it? A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A squared plus B squared equals C squared, where A squared and B squared are both sides, and the hypotenuse are C squared. So if I needed to find this missing side with this right angle, we're simply going to go, oh, that's 15 squared plus 20 squared equals that missing, I'll call it x. I don't like those. Equals x squared. Here's a great time to have our calculator, because you can have your calculator on any test or quiz in this class. Because I don't know about you, but 15 squared and 20 squared, adding those together, it might be just easier to type that in a calculator, where you type in 15 squared plus 20 squared, and then you just have a number. You're not like doing it partially in your head, where we can just type it in our calculator and we can be good. So if you could help me out, I need 15 squared plus 20 squared. 625. I'll wait for someone to second that. I was like, 2. Not that I don't trust you, and I actually know the answer, but I was like to wait so everyone has a second chance. Did a second person confirm it's 625?
Yes.
We're good with 625? Okay, it is 625. Now, I don't want x squared equals, I want x. To undo an x squared, you actually take the square root of something. If I do the square root of this, the right-hand side just turns to x. Basically, the square root and that square cancel each other off. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So I'm going to do the square root of 625. That should come out to something even. What is the square root of 625? What'd you get? 25. Anyone else get 25? Okay. I hear some yeses. We have 25. Is anyone struggling to find the square root button? Just found it? Yep. That's why we practice right now, because we're going to need that square root button for these problems. We don't really, this is really just to derive the formula, all right? So if you're like, I don't remember the Pythagorean theorem, it's okay, it's just deriving the formula. We're going to get to the formula here. All right, Now I'm given 2 points. I'm given the point 0, 1 and the point 4, 4. So 0, 1 is the point right here. Is it 4, 4? Yep. 0, 1, 4, 4 is up here. I want to know this distance. Let's call it x. Now, for future times, we don't have to draw the triangle, but let's derive the formula from the right triangle that we could draw. So I'm going to draw this triangle right here, knowing that that is a right triangle. I need to know these lengths. We don't have to do any crazy formulas right now. What is the distance from that point to the base of the triangle? How many steps is it? It's 3 steps. No, you're right. Don't overthink it. You're 3 units away. 1, 2, 3. And how many units away are on the bottom? 4 units. Now, I do want to note something really quick. I'm going to note some important information here. All right. When we go left to right, we're talking about x values. We're always talking about x values. So now remember, when it's on a number line, we subtract to get distances. That's why we did the number line first. So if I didn't have this picture up here and I needed this distance, we would just use the 2 x values. So one of our x values is 0. Maybe I'll even indicate this. This would be my x sub 1. That's my first x value. This is my second x value. If I want this distance right here, if I want this 4 without drawing and counting, remember we just do something minus something? So that would be x2 minus x1. So we will have 4 minus 0, which is our x sub 2 minus x sub 1. It is just something minus something. Now, if you're lost, we're just deriving the formula. It's okay. But I just want us to kind of get an idea of where we're going. Yes?
So, like, after we draw this, then we're going to write the formula?
Then we'll write the formula down. Yes. Okay, to get that 3, we'll use our 2 y values. Y sub 2, y sub 1. And don't worry about me saying the y sub 2s and the y sub 1s. It's just the way of saying second y value, first y value. So my second y value is 4. My first y value is 1. So to get this 3, we could just subtract our y values as something minus something, which would be 4 minus 1 would equal that 3, which is our y sub 2 minus y sub 1. I am just showing you this information so you understand why I'm going to start talking about x's and y's in the formula. But let's just have solved this. Like, you're like, Mr. Pabian, who cares? I already know it's 3 and it's 4. So let's find this missing side. Let's just use the 3 and 4 to find this missing side. So now remember, we'll use our a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we'll have our x squared would equal, I'm switching our sides just for a second. So I have my x squared equals my 2 sides. That would be 3 squared plus 4 squared. Now that's just a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Are we okay with that? A squared plus b squared equals c squared. I'm not going to do my addition yet. I'm going to rewrite this really quick. I'm going to say x equals the square root of 3 squared plus 4 squared. I'm going to go ahead and move that square to the other side by taking the square root of both sides. All right, if you do 3 squared plus 4 squared, that's 9 plus 16, which is 25. What's the square root of 25? 5. So we just come up with x equals 5. But our key thing right now This x is our distance between the points, right? That will equal the square root of something squared plus something squared. And these are our distances. These are our distances. So we're going to come up with a distance formula down here. If we need to find the distance between 2 points, the distance formula is, we'll start with the square root. Now, this is why we always want to know it's the derivative of our Pythagorean theorem, because it's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I just moved the square root to the other side. So that must mean that we have something squared plus something squared. In other words, we have our a squared plus our b squared. To get those, we just need to subtract our x values and our y values. That would be our a value and our b value. So we get our distance formula here. Our distance formula is the square root of x squared, x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. Now, our first example is they just give us points. We have to know what points those are. So as a reminder, it's our x value first. We'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This would be negative 5. 1, 2, 3. So this point right here would be negative 5, 3. My other point would be negative 2 because our x value is negative 2. And then it's going to be negative 3 because it's 3 down. Our distance formula is the square root of something squared plus something squared. Remember, it's plus between here because it came from a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It came from a squared plus b squared equals c squared. All right. These are us just subtracting our x values. These are us subtracting our y values. And it doesn't matter what order you do it in, but I usually pick the right one will be my second one, so I'll start with that one. So I'm going to do my two x values are negative 2 and negative 5. Now be careful here. That's why we did that practice before. This is negative 2 minus a negative 5. It is negative, yeah, go. So plus. So we need to make it plus. So what I would do, I would circle both of these negatives and just put a plus sign below it. Make sure you circle both of them. Don't accidentally just change one of them. They both change to positive. It's kind of like you need both negatives to line up to make your positive. Our next one is our two y values. That is negative 3 minus 3. So inside we subtract because it's a distance like the number line. Here we add because it is our a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It's kind of hard to remember what you add or subtract. So that's the way I remember it. If it works for you, awesome. Find some way to recognize that in the parentheses we subtract. Between here we add. So this is going to be a negative 3. Negative 3 came from here, and we're going to subtract that positive 3. Now let's go ahead and do the work. Negative 2 plus 5. Don't do the squared yet. Do the stuff in the parentheses first. So we have negative 2 plus 5, which is going to be 3 squared. Plus the next one is negative 3 minus 3. Is that 0? Is negative 3 minus 3 0?
Wait. No, you got 6.
It'd be negative 6. Because negative 3, and when I subtract 3 from it, we go further negative. Negative 3 minus 3 goes further, so that's a negative 6 squared. Be careful if you type this in your calculator. Make sure you use parentheses. For some of your calculators, if you type in negative 6 squared, it will actually do 6 squared and then tack a negative sign onto it. Make sure this comes out as positive. First of all, what's 3 squared? And this is totally cool if we use our calculators. What's 3 squared? 9. Okay, so we have square root of 9 plus, what's negative 6 squared? It is a positive 36. positive 36. So we now have the square root of 45. Let's type in square root of 45 in our calculator and let's get a decimal approximation. I usually round to the tenths place. 6.7. Does anyone else get 6.7 on that bad boy? I see one person nodding. Anyone want to go out and go, yes, that's correct? Yes, it's correct. I made it wavy because it means it's not exact. This means it's not me having a seizure. It is me saying it's approximately 6.7, so Mr. Pabian knows I rounded the answer. Because your calculator says 6.7 something, right? No. Yeah. So we're going to say I'm going to stop at 6.7, but it was an approximate. So that means I approximated it. You okay? Okay. Can we keep our head up? I know we're not sleeping. I just want to make sure we're up. Okay, let's look at the next one. The next one says find AB. What's the distance from A to B? Okay. Well, we just have to know the formula. So this really is just we have to know the formula, right? So we're going to go distance equals the square root of something squared plus something squared. Now, I don't have the slide up here from before, so I completely forgot the formula. So I'm going to need you to help me out. We know should this be a minus or an addition inside the parenthesis? A minus. We subtract because that's the distance on a number line. So we should have a subtraction sign on both of these. Can someone tell me a number I should put in here? The first number, what do you got?
3.
You're going to go with 3, so I'm going to pull that 3 down there. So we're going to yank this 3 and put it right there. You got the 3. Can someone tell me what the next number is I should write there? Scarlett. We should be a -4, and maybe I should change the color because I'm going to use red to circle it. So we're going to use a -4, but because we have a negative, that turns into a positive. So really it's 3 plus 4, right? Okay, I need someone else to tell me what number goes in here.
1.
You're going to go with 1? Okay. All right. Dariella? Did I say it wrong?
No.
Okay, I was just in my head because I can go either way. It's either Dariella or Dariella. I'm sorry. Okay, so Dariella picked 1 to go in here. What has to go in here? It has to be the -1. So it doesn't matter what order we do it in. Just if Dariella puts 1 there, you have to put the -1 here. You might have put the -1 in first and did the 1 second. We'll come up with the same answer. So we're going to carry down that -1, realizing that this turns into a positive. And that should equal 3 plus 4 is 7. So we'll have 7 squared plus 2 squared. So we're going to do 7 squared plus 2 squared. If we take the square root of it and we approximate that, does anyone have the approximation for this? Burke? 7.28. If it's the 10th place, hang on. If it's 2.8, does the 2 go to 3 or does it stay at 2?
Well, it's more than that.
Hang on. So if I want to approximate to this place, 7.2, we look at that next number. That next number will tell us what to do with the 2. If this is 5 or bigger, we go up to 3. If it's 4 or smaller, we leave it as 2. So we're going to say, if I want this to the 10th place, this will be 7.3 would be our correct answer on that. It is 12:01, so we have 15 minutes. Okay. All right, midpoint formula. Midpoint formula, yeah. We're just going to do the midpoint formula. We're going to skip that second part. I just don't think I'm not going to test you on it. I'm not going to quiz you on it. We're just going to do the midpoint formula. We're going to skip this next section here. We'll talk about it. So, use to find the midpoint between 2 points, x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, and y sub. So if I give you 2 points, you need to be able to tell me where the midpoint is. Now, if you remember, if you did the honors version, because we're in honors class of the assignment, I asked you to do the midpoints of 1 through 4. And you might have realized that the midpoint formula I told you is the average of their values. You would just do like x plus x divided by 2. Remember that? Well, to get the midpoint formula, all we have to do is find the midpoint of our x values and the midpoint of our y values, and we have our midpoint on the xy plane. So the formula we're going to use is basically we'll take our 2x values and add them and divide by 2. You're finding the average of your x values. Then we'll find our average of our y values, and you're done. So this is just the x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2. That is like if it's on a number line. If we have an xy plane, we just attach both of them. I'll find my average of my x values and the average of my y values. That's it. That's our midpoint formula. Once again, if you weren't practicing on the number line, then this might be just something you have to memorize the whole thing for. But it's average of your x values, average of your y values. So find the midpoint of GH. All we have to do is our midpoint is going to equal the average of our x values, so that's 7 and 9. So we'll have 7 plus 9 divided by 2, comma, add our y values, that's negative 5, plus a negative 1 divided by 2. Ooh, if I have a plus minus, does that turn all the way into a plus? No, it's just like subtraction. This is the same thing as negative 5 minus 1. So I have negative 5 minus that 1 divided by 2. And the only job you have to do if you know the formula is just simplify it. So our first one is 7 plus 9. 7 plus 9 is 16. Divided by 2 is 8. We have negative 5 minus 1, which is actually a negative 6. Divided by 2 is a negative 3. You guys want to quickly do number 4 on your own? See if you can do it. Our midpoint should have been negative 7 plus 3 divided by 2, comma, 4 plus negative 4 over 2. So pay attention to this because some of us have it wrong. Negative 7 plus 3 is a negative 4 divided by 2. So this is really negative 4 divided by 2. So that's going to be a negative 2 out front. And 4 plus a negative 4 is 0. And 0 divided by 2 is still 0. So this right here is 0 divided by 2. So we should have negative 2, 0. I saw a couple mistakes out there. Let's get that down and see if we have any questions. Okay, are we good on this? It's okay if we got it wrong. Just got to ask questions if we're not sure of something. Okay, we're going to skip this, and I'll tell you what homework we get to skip because we're going to skip this. Like I said, I threw it in there, and I'm just like, I don't think I'm going to test on it, so let's just skip it. It's finding a missing point, but that's a weird thing to ask. If I give you a midpoint and a point, you can find the other point. It's just a weird, very niche question to ask. So let's just go right into maybe some tougher questions that could appear on a test. So it says if P is the midpoint of XY and XP equals 8x minus 2 and PY equals 12x minus 3, find the value of X. Now this is slightly different than what we're doing. This is something we've done before where we need to picture what's happening here. That we have a line XY that has a midpoint P on it. So it's always a good idea to draw that picture. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself a picture of it. We'll say this is X and this is Y. I know that because they talk about segment XY and they tell me P is the midpoint of it. So we're going to go right smack dab in the middle. We're going to put a P there and we're going to put 2 tick marks on there because that's what midpoint means. Midpoint means 2 tick marks. Now we're going to put the information that they have down. They say XP equals 8x minus 2. So we'll go to XP and put 8x minus 2. It tells me PY is 12x minus 30. With that information, what formula could I write? Because I know I have to write a formula. This is algebraic, definitely. What equation could I write here? What was that? It's not our distance formula. It was from our bell work, actually. What was that?
8x minus 2 is equal
Yep.
to 12x minus 30.
That is correct too. Yeah, exactly what you have there. Remember, tick marks mean there's an equal sign. So when I see tick mark, I'm saying, oh, this equals that. And you could put it right on there. You could just put, oh, you know what? These two things must be equal to each other because there's those tick marks on there. So that's our equation. It's just 8x minus 2 equals 12x minus 30. To solve this, we'll just subtract 8x from both sides. I will now have, what, negative 2 equals 4x minus 30. I'm then going to add 30 to both sides to get that 30 over there. We're now going to have 28 equals 4x. We will divide both sides by 4. 4 goes into 28. How many times? You think it's 7? All right, I'll go with 7 for now. So we have x equals 7. It does say just find x, so we're good there. I'm not going to do 8 because we're almost ready for lunch, but I will tell you if you do number 8, you should come up with an x equaling 3 if you feel like doing it, and FH equaling a 134. Those are our 2 important values if you do this. You'll see it's pretty much the same setup where you just have this equals that. Pretty much the same thing. It's just the fact that if I say midpoint, we need to put our tick marks and we know we're going to have an equal sign. Whenever we have a segment, I'm going back in time. I'll go back to that slide if you guys missed that. Like on our bell work, there it is. This wasn't a midpoint, but you knew you had something equaling something. So I had something plus something equaling something. So we got to take a shot at it. All right, if it's a midpoint, it's usually something equals something. If it's just segments, it's usually segment plus segment equals big segment. Cool, we okay? Okay, we are going to head out to lunch. When we come back, I'll answer a couple questions. We will take our quiz, and whatever time you have left, you will use to work on your homework. Okay? Stop. Before I forget. Sit down. Remember, I cut out those sections, so I want to tell you what homework questions you don't need to work on. So you don't need to do number 10, 11, or 12. 10 or 11 or 12 you don't need to do. 10, 11, 12 you don't need to do.